Let me take you back to the moment my life unraveled, a story that began with hope and ended in betrayal. I'm Ryan, 30 years old, living what many would call a charmed life in sunny San Diego. For 3 years, I had been with Sabrina, the woman who seemed to have it all: beauty, charm, wit, and an ability to light up any room she walked into. Everyone loved her. Hell, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We were planning the wedding of our dreams, a lavish beachfront ceremony, expensive catering, live music, everything you could imagine. It wasn't cheap, but I didn't care because I believed we were building something real, something lasting. Love, right? That's what they tell you, that when you find the one, nothing else matters. But then came the cracks in the facade, subtle at first, like whispers of thunder before a storm. About a week before the wedding, Sabrina started acting different. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Weddings are overwhelming, aren't they? Guest lists, seating charts, floral arrangements, it's enough to drive anyone crazy. But this wasn't just stress, it was something darker, something more deliberate. She became secretive, guarding her phone like it held state secrets. Every time it buzzed or lit up, she'd snatch it off the table as if her life depended on keeping its contents hidden from me. If I asked about it, even casually, she'd deflect with vague answers or outright irritation. One night stands out vividly. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through social media while Sabrina was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand beside me. Normally, I wouldn't have paid attention, but the screen lit up, and there it was, a name that froze my blood: Jason. Jason. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Jason, the guy she swore was long gone, ancient history, erased from her life forever. And yet here he was, texting her. The message itself wasn't incriminating, just 2 words: looking forward to tonight. But those 6 little letters felt like daggers slicing through my chest. What exactly was she looking forward to? Why was she meeting him days before our wedding? When Sabrina emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, I confronted her. "Hey, so Jason texted you earlier. What's that about?" I tried to sound nonchalant, but inside, my heart was pounding like a war drum. She didn't hesitate for a second. "Oh, Jason, yeah, he's just going through some stuff. I've been checking in on him. No big deal." She said it so casually, like helping your ex navigate personal crises days before marrying someone else was completely normal behavior. Maybe for her, it was, but for me, it felt like the ground beneath my feet was crumbling. And that was only the beginning. Over the next few days, Sabrina's lies grew bolder, more calculated. She told me repeatedly that she was meeting Grace, her maid of honor, to finalize wedding details. Each time, she'd brush off my questions with rehearsed excuses. "We're finalizing the seating chart," she'd say, or Grace needed help picking up centerpieces. Once, I joked, half serious, "What? Do you have a secret admirer or something?" She laughed it off, but the way she avoided eye contact made my stomach churn. Something wasn't adding up. Every instinct screamed at me to dig deeper, but part of me refused to believe the worst. After all, why would someone risk ruining their own fairy tale unless they truly didn't value it? Then came the kicker, the moment that shattered whatever fragile trust remained between us. Eric, my best man, called me late one night, his voice trembling with hesitation. "Yo, Ryan, are you busy? Look, man, I don't know if I should say anything." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" "Eric," he paused, then dropped the bombshell. "I'm at Sheeman Bar right now, and I just saw Sabrina. She's not with Grace, she's with some guy, and I think it's Jason." My world tilted on its axis. Without waiting for him to finish, I demanded proof. Moments later, a photo appeared on my phone, a grainy but undeniable image of Sabrina sitting cozily in a booth with Jason, her hand resting on his arm, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. That night, sleep eluded me. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the photo over and over in my mind. How could she do this? How could she sit across from another man, smiling, touching him, while I sat at home dreaming of a future with her? The betrayal burned hotter than anything I'd ever felt. By morning, I knew one thing for certain: Sabrina wasn't the woman I thought she was, and I couldn't let her get away with it. The night Eric called me about seeing Sabrina at Sheeman Bar with Jason felt like the beginning of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My mind was already racing after that photo he sent, a grainy but damning image of her sitting way too close to him, laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world. But what truly shattered any lingering hope I had for an innocent explanation came later, when I decided to dig deeper into her phone while she was out running errands again. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was survival. I knew it was wrong to snoop, but how could I not? She'd been lying so blatantly, and every instinct screamed at me to uncover the truth before it consumed me entirely. When I finally unlocked her phone, she'd left it on the counter, this time careless or arrogant. I don't know. What I found made my blood run cold. There weren't just texts between her and Jason, there were photos. Photos of her posing seductively, wearing nothing but lingerie. And then one picture stopped me dead in my tracks. It was the wedding dress. The same dress she claimed she was trying on earlier that week, supposedly to make sure it fit perfectly for our big day. Except now, here it was, draped provocatively over a chair behind her, while she struck poses that screamed anything but bridal purity. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages accompanying those images. One read, "You like this? Thought I'd give you something special since we won't see each other until tomorrow. Tomorrow." That word echoed in my head like a death knell. They were planning another meeting, and it wasn't just casual coffee. Another message confirmed my worst fears. "Can't wait to show you more tonight. Room 214 at Ocean View Inn. Don't be late." Room 214. The name of the hotel hit me like a freight train. Ocean View Inn wasn't some random place, it was right near Sheeman Bar, where Eric spotted them. How convenient. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up recent transactions on our shared credit card account. Sure enough, there it was, who charged for 2 nights at Ocean View Inn under both their names. Sabrina and Jason, together, in a hotel room, days before our wedding. My vision blurred with rage, and I nearly threw the laptop across the room. Every fiber of my being wanted to storm down to that hotel, burst into room 214, and confront them face to face. But I forced myself to breathe, to think. If I acted impulsively, I'd lose control of the situation, and I needed to stay calm if I wanted justice. Still, the betrayal burned hotter than ever. How dare she use our resources, the money meant for our future, to fund her affair? How dare she stand beside me, smiling sweetly, while secretly plotting rendezvous with another man? As the hours ticked by, my anger morphed into something darker, a cold, calculated resolve. I printed out screenshots of the texts and photos, along with the hotel receipt, evidence, proof that no amount of tears or excuses could deny. Then I waited. Waited for her to come home acting like everything was fine, humming songs and talking about seating charts as though she hadn't just betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. When she finally walked through the door, cheerful and oblivious, I almost lost it. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw the look on my face. "Hey," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "What's going on?" Without saying a word, I handed her the stack of papers. Her eyes widened as she flipped through them, her face draining of color. For a moment, she just stood there, frozen, unable to speak. Then came the waterworks, the fake tears, the desperate apologies, the promises to explain everything. But I wasn't falling for it this time, not after seeing the extent of her deceit. "You thought I'd never find out?" I asked, my voice low and steady despite the storm raging inside me. "That I'd just sit back and let you ruin everything we've built? Who are you, Sabrina?" Because the woman I thought I loved would never do something like this. She tried to defend herself. "Of course, Ryan, please, it's not what it looks like." Jason reached out to me, and I got caught up. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Didn't mean for it to go this far," I repeated, incredulous. "So sending him pictures of yourself in lingerie, booking hotel rooms together, and lying straight to my face, that's all just getting caught up? Do you even hear yourself?" Her tears flowed freely now, but I felt nothing, not sympathy, not regret, not even anger anymore. Just emptiness. Betrayal has a way of hollowing you out, leaving only the bitter residue of broken trust. "I'll fix this," she pleaded, grabbing my arm. "Just give me a chance, please. but her words fell flat. A chance. She'd had countless chances to come clean, to end whatever twisted game she was playing. Instead, she chose lies upon lies, dragging me further into her web of deceit. No, there was no coming back from this, not for her, not for us. The confrontation with Sabrina was nothing short of a psychological battlefield, one where she wielded denial and manipulation like weapons. When I finally confronted her about the photos, the texts, and Eric's damning evidence, I expected tears, maybe even some genuine remorse. What I didn't expect was the calculated venom in her voice as she turned the tables on me. "You really think this is all about me?" she snapped, her tone dripping with accusation. "Ryan, you've been so distant lately, always working late, ignoring me when I try to talk to you. Do you have any idea how lonely I've felt? Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to find comfort somewhere else." Her words hit me like a slap across the face, not because they were true, but because she had the audacity to twist reality into something unrecognizable. Lonely comfort. She was the one sneaking around behind my back while planning our wedding. Yet here she was, painting herself as the victim, framing my supposed neglect as the root cause of her betrayal. It was infuriating, but worse still, it was clear she wasn't done yet. "If you keep pushing this," she continued, her voice rising with manufactured indignation, "then fine, maybe we shouldn't get married at all. Is that what you want, Ryan? To ruin everything we've worked for over something so small? Because trust me, everyone will side with me when they hear how obsessed you've become over nothing." Her threat hung heavy in the air, a thinly veiled attempt to manipulate me into silence. Small nothing, the woman who swore she loved me was now dismissing her affair with Jason as trivial, as though it were no different than forgetting to pick up groceries. But Sabrina wasn't content to stop there. Later that evening, after our explosive argument, I heard her pacing in the bedroom, whispering furiously into her phone. At first, I thought she might be talking to Jason again, but then I realized it was her family. She called them one by one, spinning an elaborate web of lies designed to paint me as the villain. By the time she finished, I could practically hear her mother's shrill voice through the receiver. "He's unstable," Sabrina sobbed, loud enough for me to overhear from the living room. "Ever since the stress of the wedding started piling up, he's been acting strange. Now he's accusing me of things I haven't done, making wild claims just to hurt me. Mom, I don't know what to do." It was maddening. Here I was, holding concrete proof of her deceit, and she had the gall to portray herself as the injured party. Worse still, I knew exactly how persuasive she could be. Her charm was magnetic. People naturally gravitated toward her warmth and charisma. If she told them I was losing my mind, they'd believe her without question. And judging by the way she carried herself during our earlier fight with feigned vulnerability and crocodile tears, I knew she'd double down on this narrative until she got what she wanted: control. By the next morning, the fallout from her campaign against me began to unfold. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from her parents, each one more accusatory than the last. Her father's text read, "We need to talk. You owe Sabrina an apology before this gets out of hand." Out of hand. As if confronting her about cheating days before our wedding was unreasonable. Meanwhile, her mother left a voicemail that chilled me to the bone. "Ryan, whatever issues you're having, taking them out on Sabrina isn't the answer. She's fragile right now, and your behavior is unacceptable. Fix this or else." Sabrina's strategy was clear: isolate me, discredit me, and force me to back down. But what truly unnerved me was the realization that she might actually succeed. Friends we shared began reaching out, asking cautious questions about what happened. One mutual acquaintance even hinted that Sabrina confided in her about feeling emotionally abused by me. Emotionally abused. The phrase stung, not because it held any truth, but because it showed just how far Sabrina was willing to go to protect herself. She wasn't just denying her actions, she was rewriting history, erasing every trace of accountability. Despite the mounting pressure, something inside me refused to yield. Every lie she told only deepened my resolve. I remembered the photo Eric sent, the image of her laughing with Jason, her hand resting casually on his arm. That moment crystallized everything I needed to know. No amount of manipulation or gaslighting could change the facts. Sabrina wasn't the woman I fell in love with. She was someone else entirely, a master manipulator who thrived on deception and chaos. The morning of the wedding felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Sabrina buzzed around the apartment with an unsettling energy, her voice chipper as she talked about how perfect everything was going to be. She had no idea what I was planning, or maybe she did and was trying to distract herself. The morning of the wedding felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Sabrina buzzed around the apartment with an unsettling energy, her voice chipper as she talked about how perfect everything was going to be. She had no idea what I was planning, or maybe she did and was trying to distract herself. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. My mind was made up. There would be no wedding today. But before I could even step foot into the venue, Sabrina tried one last desperate move to manipulate the situation in her favor. Earlier that day, while I was getting dressed, my phone buzzed incessantly. It wasn't unusual for people to check in on me, friends, family, reminders about timelines, but this time, something felt off. When I finally glanced at the screen, my stomach dropped. There were messages from both sets of parents, but hers were particularly alarming. Her mother's text read, "Ryan, we need to talk. Sabrina says you've been acting strangely lately. Are you okay?" And then came another message, this time from her father, "Son, your behavior is concerning us all. Let's sort this out before things escalate further." I stared at the texts, my jaw tightening. Concern, escalate. What exactly had Sabrina told them? A few moments later, Eric called me. "Dude," he said, his tone urgent, "Sabrina's been spinning some wild story to her parents. Apparently, she convinced them you're having some kind of mental breakdown because of wedding stress. They're actually considering sending over their private doctor to evaluate you." My blood boiled. Of course she'd pull something like this. If she couldn't control the narrative, she'd try to discredit me entirely. The audacity was staggering. Instead of owning up to her lies, she was doubling down, painting me as unstable to protect herself. "Let them come," I muttered under my breath, though part of me wondered if they'd really go through with it. Sure enough, not long after Eric hung up, my doorbell rang. Standing outside were two men in suits, one of whom introduced himself as Dr. Hartley, the family physician. "This won't take long," he said smoothly, flashing a practiced smile. "Just a quick assessment to ensure everyone's comfortable moving forward with the big day." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, hours away from exposing Sabrina's betrayal, and she was orchestrating a psychological evaluation to silence me. By the time we arrived at the venue, Sabrina was practically glowing, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Guests mingled happily, sipping champagne and admiring the extravagant decorations. Everything looked picture-perfect: the white chairs lined neatly along the aisle, the cascading floral arrangements, the shimmering ocean backdrop. To anyone else, it was a dream wedding. To me, it was a facade built on lies. As the ceremony began, I stood frozen at the altar, waiting for my moment. The officiant droned on about love and commitment, words that now felt hollow given the circumstances. Then came the pivotal question, "Ryan, do you take Sabrina to be your lawfully wedded wife?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, expectant. Sabrina's smile widened, her grip tightening on the bouquet in her hands. For a brief second, I considered letting her believe I'd cave. But then I took a deep breath and spoke clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sabrina's face crumpled instantly. What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ignoring her, I turned to address the stunned audience. "I need to tell you all the truth. Sabrina hasn't been honest, not with me, not with any of you. She's been seeing her ex, Jason, behind my back for weeks. She lied to me, lied to our friends, and lied to all of you." Chaos erupted. Murmurs spread like wildfire, growing louder by the second. Sabrina's mother clutched her chest, looking like she might faint. Her bridesmaids exchanged horrified glances, whispering frantically among themselves. But the most explosive reaction came from Sabrina herself. With a guttural scream, she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, someone stop him," she cried, clawing at the hem of her dress. "He's ruining everything." Her father didn't hesitate. He stormed toward the stage, his face red with fury. "How dare you humiliate my daughter like this?" he roared, shoving past guests to reach me. His fists clenched, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might actually throw a punch. Security guards rushed in to restrain him, but the damage was done. The entire scene descended into pandemonium, guests shouting, cameras flashing, tears streaming down faces. Through it all, I remained calm. This wasn't about revenge or cruelty, it was about justice. Sabrina had betrayed me, manipulated me, and tried to gaslight me into submission. Now, in front of everyone who mattered, she was exposed for who she truly was. As I walked down the aisle, leaving the chaos behind, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Whatever fallout awaited me, it was worth it. I refused to settle for less than I deserved, and Sabrina wasn't worth compromising my dignity. In the days following the wedding debacle, Sabrina didn't go quietly into the shadows. Instead, she launched a full-scale campaign to salvage her reputation and destroy mine in the process. It started with a carefully crafted post on social media, one that painted me as the villain of our story. "I never thought I'd have to share this," her caption began, dripping with faux vulnerability. "But after being publicly humiliated by Ryan at what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I feel like the truth needs to come out. He's been emotionally abusive for months, constantly accusing me of things I haven't done. On our wedding day, he abandoned me because of his insecurities and paranoia. I just want everyone to know who he really is." The post went viral almost instantly, racking up thousands of likes and comments within hours. Her followers rallied around her, calling me every name under the sun: coward, monster, control freak. Some even messaged me directly, hurling insults and demanding answers. At first, it felt like the world had turned against me. Even some of my closest friends expressed doubts. "Are you sure about all this, man?" One of them asked hesitantly over the phone. She seemed so broken. "Is there any chance you misinterpreted something?" For a moment, I questioned whether I'd made the right call. Was I too harsh? Did I handle things poorly? But then I remembered the evidence: the photos Eric took of Sabrina cozying up to Jason, the flirtatious texts between them, the hotel receipts. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was betrayal, plain and simple. So, I decided to fight fire with fire. I created my own post, attaching screenshots of everything: the messages, the pictures, even the invoice from Ocean View. And here's the truth, I wrote beneath the images: Sabrina lied to me repeatedly, cheated on me with her ex while planning our wedding, and tried to gaslight me when I confronted her. If anyone deserves sympathy here, it's not her. The reaction was immediate. People who had initially sided with Sabrina began to question their stance. One by one, they flipped, leaving scathing replies on her original post. "Wow, Sabrina, how could you do this?" one commenter wrote. "You're the one who ruined your own wedding, not him." Another added, "If these screenshots are real, then you've got no business playing victim. Own up to your mistakes." The tide was turning, and Sabrina must have realized it, because her next move was desperate and legally reckless. A week later, I received an official letter from a lawyer representing Sabrina. She was suing me for defamation, claiming that I had maliciously damaged her reputation by exposing her affair. According to the lawsuit, I had fabricated the evidence to justify my decision to leave her at the altar. My stomach churned as I read through the document. How could she possibly think this would work? Still, I couldn't ignore it. With Eric's help, I gathered every piece of proof we had: the photos, the text messages, the hotel bills, even witness statements from mutual friends who confirmed seeing Sabrina with Jason. We presented everything to my attorney, who assured me we had a strong case. The court hearing was tense, to say the least. Sabrina showed up looking immaculate, dressed in a sleek black suit designed to make her appear professional and sympathetic. Her lawyer argued passionately that I had acted out of spite, using fabricated evidence to tarnish her name. But when my attorney cross-examined her, cracks began to show in her story. Under pressure, Sabrina admitted that she had met with Jason multiple times but insisted it was just friendly. When pressed further, she stumbled over her words, unable to explain why her text suggested otherwise or why her name appeared alongside his on the hotel receipt. By the end of the trial, the judge ruled decisively in my favor. There is insufficient evidence to support Ms. Miller's claims, he stated firmly. Furthermore, the defendant has provided substantial documentation proving his allegations. This case is dismissed. As Sabrina stormed out of the courtroom, visibly fuming, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Justice had been served not just for me, but for anyone who might have fallen victim to her manipulations. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, eager for sound bites. Sabrina refused to comment, her face flushed with embarrassment. Meanwhile, I stood tall, flanked by Eric and a few other supportive friends. All I wanted was the truth to come out, I told the cameras. And today, it did. In the weeks following the wedding fiasco, I thought I'd already seen the worst of Sabrina's betrayal. But as it turned out, her deceit ran deeper than I could have ever imagined, and it wasn't just about emotional infidelity. One evening, while going through her shared bank statements to finalize some post-wedding expenses, or rather, what would have been wedding expenses, I stumbled upon something that made my blood boil all over again. There, buried among charges for catering deposits and floral arrangements, were dozens of transactions I didn't recognize: payments to credit card companies, personal loans, even a designer handbag purchase at an upscale boutique. At first, I assumed they were mistakes or perhaps legitimate expenses she hadn't mentioned. After all, planning a wedding was stressful, right? People sometimes forgot to communicate every little detail. But when I cross-referenced the dates of these transactions with her supposed errands and meetings with Jason, a chilling pattern emerged. Many of these payments coincided with times she claimed she was finalizing seating charts or picking up centerpieces. The realization hit me like a freight train. Sabrina had been using our joint account, not just mine, to pay off her debts. Debts she'd accumulated long before we started planning the wedding. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. How dare she exploit our financial partnership this way? We weren't married yet, but those funds represented years of hard work, savings, and sacrifices I'd made for us for a future together. And here she was, funneling them into her own selfish pursuits while simultaneously lying to my face and sneaking around with another man. It felt like a slap in the face, a calculated move designed to manipulate not only my trust but also my resources. But the hits kept coming. Just as I was trying to process the financial mess she'd created, my phone rang late one night. The caller ID showed an unknown number, and for a moment, I debated whether to answer. Curiosity got the better of me, though, and I pressed accept. On the other end of the line was a woman whose voice sounded vaguely familiar, though I couldn't quite place it. "Ryan," she began hesitantly, "this is Lauren, Grace's cousin. I don't know if you remember me, but I was supposed to be one of Sabrina's bridesmaids." My stomach tightened instantly. Of course I remembered Lauren. She'd been part of the bridal party drama leading up to the wedding, though she always seemed quieter than the rest. Something about her tone told me this call wasn't casual. "What can I do for you, Lauren?" I asked cautiously, bracing myself for whatever bombshell she was about to drop. She hesitated, then sighed heavily. "Look, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but after everything that happened, I feel like you deserve to know the truth." "Sabrina, well, let's just say Jason wasn't the only guy she was seeing behind your back." My heart sank as her words sunk in. "What do you mean?" I managed to choke out, though deep down, I already knew where this conversation was headed. Lauren explained haltingly, clearly uncomfortable with the role she was playing. "I overheard her talking to Grace once. She mentioned someone named Mark. Apparently, they'd been hooking up on and off for months. And there might have been others too. I didn't want to believe it at first, but now." Well, it makes sense why she acted so weird whenever anyone asked about her schedule. Her voice trailed off, leaving me reeling. Others, not just Jason, not just one fleeting mistake born out of stress or loneliness, but multiple betrayals spanning months or maybe even longer. Each word Lauren spoke felt like another nail in the coffin of my shattered trust. By the time we hung up, I was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anger, frustration, disbelief, it all swirled inside me like a toxic storm. How could she do this? How could she sit across from me, smiling sweetly, pretending to love me, while secretly juggling relationships with God knows how many men? The next morning, I decided to dig deeper into our finances, determined to uncover the full extent of Sabrina's deception. What I found only added fuel to the fire. Not only had she drained significant portions of our shared savings, but she'd also taken out additional loans under both our names without my knowledge. Loan officers began calling me, demanding explanations for missed payments. Credit card companies followed suit, threatening legal action if balances weren't settled soon. Overnight, I went from being financially stable to drowning in debt, all because of her reckless behavior. It was infuriating, but worse still, it was isolating. Friends who initially sympathized with Sabrina's plight stopped reaching out altogether once the truth came out. Even her family distanced themselves, unable to reconcile the image of their perfect daughter with the reality of her actions. Meanwhile, Sabrina herself continued to bombard me with texts and calls, pleading for forgiveness and promising to make things right. But her apologies rang hollow, meaningless against the backdrop of her endless lies. By the time I finally blocked her number for good, I realized something profound. Sabrina wasn't just a cheater. She was a manipulator, a master of deception who thrived on exploiting others' trust for her own gain. And I refused to let her drag me down any further. The fallout from Sabrina's betrayal didn't just end with her humiliation at the altar, it spiraled into something far more public and devastating. After Eric shared the damning photo of Sabrina cozying up to Jason at Sheeman Bar, along with screenshots of their flirtatious texts, the internet exploded. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like #SabrinaExposed trending across platforms. People who had once praised her as the perfect bride now condemned her actions, calling her out for her deceit and lack of integrity. The same charm that made her so magnetic now worked against her. Everyone felt personally betrayed by her lies. Sabrina tried desperately to salvage her reputation, posting tearful videos online claiming she was a victim of circumstance. "I made mistakes," she sobbed in one video, "but Ryan humiliated me in front of everyone I love. He ruined my life." Her words fell flat, though, because the evidence spoke louder than any apology or excuse. The photos of her laughing with Jason, the hotel receipts under both their names, and even her own defensive behavior during our confrontation painted a clear picture. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done, she was sorry she'd been caught. As the days turned into weeks, the backlash grew worse. Friends distanced themselves from her, unwilling to associate with someone whose actions had caused such a scandal. Even her family began to see her differently. At first, they rallied around her, blaming me for being too harsh. But when the truth came out, her financial manipulations, the multiple men she'd secretly seen behind my back, they couldn't defend her anymore. By the time the dust settled, Sabrina was alone, ostracized not only by me but by nearly everyone she thought would stand by her side. For me, the aftermath was equally challenging, though in a different way. While Sabrina faced public ridicule, I grappled with the emotional scars of betrayal. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying every moment, the laughter, the promises, the lies, and wondering how I hadn't seen through her act sooner. But amidst the pain, there was also support. My family and friends rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. My mom called daily, reminding me that I deserved better. "You're worth more than this, Ryan," she'd say firmly. "Don't let her make you doubt yourself." Eric, ever loyal, became my rock. He dragged me out of the house on weekends, forcing me to socialize despite my reluctance. "You can't stay cooped up forever, man," he'd say. "She doesn't get to win by keeping you miserable." Slowly, his persistence paid off. I started reconnecting with old hobbies, playing guitar, hiking trails I hadn't visited in years. Each small step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that Sabrina's deception had stolen. Then, unexpectedly, hope returned. A few months after the wedding debacle, I met someone new, a woman named Claire. And like Sabrina, Claire was refreshingly genuine. She had no ulterior motives, no hidden agendas. When we talked, she listened not just to respond, but to understand. Our connection grew naturally, without the pressure or drama that had defined my relationship with Sabrina. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe opening up to someone again. Claire knew about my past, how could she not? It was hard to miss given how publicly everything unfolded, but instead of judging me, she encouraged me to focus on healing. "You've been through hell," she told me one evening as we sat watching the sunset, "but don't let it define you. Love isn't supposed to hurt like that. Real love builds you up, not tears you down." Her words resonated deeply, helping me realize that while Sabrina had broken my trust, she hadn't broken my capacity to love or be loved. Looking back, I learned invaluable lessons from the experience. First, trust is fragile. Once shattered, it takes immense effort to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. Second, red flags should never be ignored. Those little instincts telling you something isn't right. Listen to them. And finally, never settle for less than you deserve. Life is too short to waste on people who don't value you. Sabrina may have thought she could manipulate her way into happiness, but in the end, her choices left her isolated and untrusted. Meanwhile, I walked away stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace a future filled with authenticity and respect. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through a similar situation, it's this: don't let fear of judgment keep you from standing up for yourself. Whether it's walking away from a toxic relationship or confronting someone who's wronged you, your peace of mind is worth it. You deserve a partner who treats you with honesty, kindness, and loyalty, not someone who uses you as a stepping stone for their own selfish desires. Remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most beautiful beginnings.